Hey guys, what's going on? So welcome back to my channel. I will be going over React today. So I've done a lot of videos where we were using Webpack in combination with React, in combination with TypeScript, and setting all that up together. So in this video, we'll be focusing on actually how we're going to use React. So I hope you enjoy this video, and I will see you soon. Okay, so now starting with React. So what I would like everyone to start off with is to use create React app. So over here, if you go to create React app, so create -react app.dev/docs/ adding TypeScript. There is this helpful little boilerplate code that you can get. So if you copy this and paste this into your terminal, you should get a folder which would have your create React. It would have your React app set up essentially. So you don't have to do all the grunt work of like setting up a custom Webpack configuration. That's totally out of scope. In this video, we're just going to focus on actually knowing how to use React. So once you do that, you will get a folder. So right now I'm in that folder. So if I do pwd, I'm inside my app over here. Okay. So now let's get started. So let's go into our app.tsx file over here. So tsx is just the TypeScript version of JSX. Let's do a yarn start to see what we get. This should open up on a browser on the right. Okay, so there we go, 3001. I also like to leave console open just in case there's any surprise errors going on. Okay, so we have this out of the box set up. We don't really need most of this, so what we don't need is everything in here. So let me just delete that and let me save that and see what we get. I kind of like the black background, so I'm going to use that. Okay, so let's actually start off with a greeting message. So let's just do hello viewers t.code viewers at time. And over here, I'm gonna try to put in a time, or let's just put in a number for now. So we'll do const number is equal to 2, and then over here to template in the variable number inside, all you have to do is put curly brackets, and then you can put your JavaScript expression inside there. So we save that. It says hello t.code viewers at time 2. I think let me zoom this in by 1 to make sure everyone can see. Okay, so now we have that. One thing good that comes with TypeScript is now this should be strongly typed. So if we go num, first of all, this is const, so it won't even allow me to change it. So if I do let, and over here I say num is equal to the string literal version of 2, and we save it, there is an error here. So it says failed to compile. Type string is not assignable to type number. So this is something really helpful, and I would encourage everyone to use the TypeScript version of React or the TypeScript version of any project for the most bit. It's super nice. You won't have the bigger your application gets, the more all of these small things make a big difference. Okay, so that's how we get our number to show up over there. So JavaScript expression. So let's try one more thing. Let's use today's date. So we do new date. I know this is not supposed to work, so it'll break right here because date is a it can be parsed into a string. It's like its own object. It's its own object pretty much. So what we can do after that is go to num over here and say .toString. I think toString should be enough. There's toIsoString as well. And yeah, so there is the time that you see is going on over here. Okay, so now we have that. I think let's just nicely format this and do toIsoString. Okay, cool. That is not nicely formatted. To locale string. I don't want to waste too much time on this. Okay, that looks much more presentable. Okay, so we have this going on. Let's do now state update, right? We have a state over here. So let's say we have this number. Let's rename this to date first of all. So date and then this date as well. So now that frees up the number is equal to 0. Okay, so now we want to print this number over here. So we'll go, let's just put this in an H2, and this will be our number over here. So we should see a nice big number that is 0. So now we want to try to update this number, right? So let's actually make a button. We're gonna make a button and then register an event listener to the button to change the number. And that just might be all big words and fancy jargon, but let's actually just do it out. It's much more easier than you think. So I'll say click me, and then over here I'll just have an on-click listener. And this on-click listener will take in a function. So we have to make that function right now. So we'll do const handle increment is equal to just empty void function, and then all I will do is do number is equal to num plus 1, right? That should just increment our number. Now we can just pass this function in over here, and now let's save this. Okay, now let's try, let's see what's this problem over here. Header component, something about a div being cited. Okay, it's gone now, never mind. Okay, so now let's click me, and it seems like this number is not really incrementing, but it seems like it should, right? We have our number over here, we have our number state, we incremented by 1. Let's do one thing. So console, let's put a console log over here to see what's happening. You have been clicked, and then I will also console log the number over here. So let me click this. And if you see our numbers, it is incrementing, but it is not updating in the UI over here. And that's one thing about React. It needs to re-render to show this new number. And the way you do that in React is you use useState. And I'll show you what useState looks like. So useState over here, and instead of our number being declared over here, we have a const, and then it gets destructured for a getter and setter pretty much, and I'll show you which one is a getter and setter. So use state, and let's put the initial value as 0. So whatever you put over here is going to be your initial value when your component mounts. So this is the setter, where you can set the value of your number, and this is essentially the value of your variable. So now all we have to do is take this, put this over here, and say, okay, set number to, again, what we were doing one line before is num plus 1. And now we can remove these other 2 lines over here. So now let's save this and see what we get. Clear the console, click me, and if you notice now that our numbers are going up, and what's also cool is that the time is also incrementing every time we click it, because there's a new value over there. So this just proves that React needs to re-render to show the new UI, and essentially set whatever, like the second argument you get from useState, when that value changes, or when you give it a new value, it tells React that, hey, there's new information, we need to re-render this component. That's essentially what it is doing. Okay, so now we got all of this. Let's actually create a decrementer as well while we're here. Okay, so we'll just name it handle const handle decrement, and I will just change it over here. So decrement, and it will do the opposite. So it will be set state, or sorry, set number, and it will just decrement it by 1. And then here we'll just say increment me, and then decrement me. Okay, so now we got our increment and our decrement. So if we click decrement, it should be going down, but we might have named it. Oh, it's this handle increment too, so I'll have to pass it over here, save it, let's reload so we go back to 0. Okay, so now we can increment, and now if we click the decrement button, we should go, our numbers should decrease. This doesn't change what's happening with date. Date will just keep, there's a new value for date for every re-render, right? Where every second it changes. So that will stay the same. Okay, so now this comes off to our second lesson for React. In React, you can make components, reusable components. And here's one thing that we can do. We can make our buttons, we can abstract them into one component. And I'll show you what I mean. So we will make a file here called components. And inside components, we will make a file called button. So button.tsx. And we'll just do the usual boilerplate, import React from React, and then we will just make a const button is equal to a function that just returns essentially our same button, right? We just want to abstract that logic out. So increment me, and then it will also take an on-click listener, for some function essentially. But now the question is, okay, so we have this component here, but how do we use it over here, right? We want this text to show up in here, and we also want to pass in the same function that increments and decrements, because you can't really do it from over here. It doesn't have access to this state. So here's the thing we can do. There's this thing called props. So we can pass in props or properties to our button component, and then it can act on behalf of us. So this is what I mean by that. So let's say it takes in a props, right? Whatever you pass into your button component is going to be your props. And inside the props, we will pass an on-click event listener or an on-click function. And we will also pass in some text, right? So again, this is destructuring for people that don't know. This is a JavaScript feature. So instead of doing const on click is equal to props on click, you can actually rewrite line 5 as we have in line 4. It literally means the same thing. Okay, since we're in the nice land of TypeScript, it says that props has implicit type of any, so let's actually type safe that. So over here, we will just pull out FC, which is a functional component type, and it will take in a prop. I'll take in a props interface, and we'll declare that right here. So interface props. So this is the TypeScript that we're using. And where we said we're going to pass in props that are text and the on-click function to help increment and decrement. So the first argument will be a text string, and the next one will be an on-click function. And then this would just be a function, but it's just returning void. There's nothing special about this. And here we go. We actually have the squiggles gone away now because props is now strongly typed. This is spelled wrong. Let me fix that. And then finally, one thing we have to do is export default button over here. Okay, so now we have our button component created. Now all we have to do is bring in our button component. So import button from components. So from this directory, from components to button. So now we have our button over here. So now let's actually put it down over here. So we use the button component the same way we do with any HTML or JSX element. So, I just changed my language over here. Let me change that back. So it would be button. And again, it took in properties. And the way you pass in properties is by referencing them over here. So let's go back over here and see what we named it. We named it text and on click. So all we have to do is say text is equal to increment me, and then it also takes an on click function. So this will be our handle increment function. Okay, cool. So our squiggles are also gone. That means TypeScript is happy. So now let's copy this twice over because it's the same thing, and copy this over. And we can now delete the buttons below. So now let me save this, And yeah, so we see text is assigned value, but it's never used. Okay, so this is something super helpful too. It shows us that we didn't really use text. So right now, if we save this and reload, we actually have increment me showing up twice because this is just this is constant throughout all the components. So to use that again, let's copy the text variable. And to use JavaScript inside JSX, you would have to use your curly bracket and then just paste in your variable. So now when we say save that, we see increment me and decrement me. And when we click that, we should get the exact same behavior we did before. Just now we are using reusable components. We're also passing in props, and we're also passing in different values for them. Okay, so another helpful thing to know for React, which is super useful, is re-rendering stuff. So you have an array of data and you want to display that somehow, right? Okay, so another thing as well is if you want to know how to use styles, you use it the same way. So it's another property, but here's the difference. There's two curly brackets, and it confused me the first time, like why is the rest of the props taking one curly bracket, but styles is taking two? Because styles essentially, this is how styles is declared, like this is how you use it, but styles actually takes an object. That's why we put in one more curly bracket. This signals the start of the object, and this outer bracket just signals the start of the input value. Just like on click over here, the start of the first curly bracket signals that here's the input value. Okay, so let's do this one thing. So now let's add some margin to the top and bottom. So we'll say margin, top will be 0.5 rem, and then the sides will be 0 rem over here. So we save that. You see we have nice padding going on over here around it. We can also set a height for these, a height for 40 pixels, I guess, over here. And oh yeah, so we also need to separate them by commas. So if we comma that out, we should get them with a nice height as well. Let me also zoom in by one so you can see, or a couple. Yeah, so you can see your increment me, and you can using all the styles here. So one thing to note is that, for example, you want to use padding top, right? In regular CSS, you would say padding top, like that. You can't really do that in the land of JSX. So wherever there is usually a dash, you would remove that dash and capitalize the next word. So in this case, it would be padding capital T for top, and then we will just say padding top, I don't know, 10 pixels. And we save that, and then you see we have the padding top going on. Okay, so that's all fun stuff now. Let's actually comment this out because we don't really need this anymore. Let's move on to our next topic, which we want to talk about re-rendering list, pretty much. Like you can use this with tables, you can use this with pretty much anything, essentially when you have data. So one thing I'm going to use is a JSON API. So JSON API endpoint. I'm going to use a JSON API endpoint over here. I forget the placeholder. Here we go. So there's a JSON placeholder over here, and this is actually how you fetch it. So I am going to fetch the post, which is 100 of them. So I'll just copy that over here, and I will paste that down over here and change this to post. So this should get me all the post, all the 100 posts. Let's actually save this and see what happens. So we saved it, and if you notice on your console here on your right, we can actually see the data. So we have an array. We have an array of all the data that we need. We just need a way to loop over this data. So we're going to do the same thing again. We need to store this inside state. So the way we do that, again, let's declare our state. So const data and set data is equal to useState. and we will just declare this to an empty array. We'll come across this later, but I'll need to also type infer this. I'll show you what I mean about that later. So over here, we're doing the fetch to the JSON placeholder, and then we are getting the response and parsing it to JSON, and then we are finally getting that data over here. So over here, we will just say set data, and then we are just going to, save that. So that should set the data. So let's save this, and let's actually restart this. So that sets the data, but we don't really see anything. Let's actually do a console log data over here. So we save that, and actually what you notice is we're fetching data over and over again. And actually, if you go to the network tab, I am spamming that endpoint over there. So let me actually close this before I break anything, and let me restart this over here. So I'll try to explain what was happening over there for a minute. So you know how I said when you set state, it causes the React component to re-render. So in the same way, the bad code is still here, so it's still doing the same thing. Okay, so back to my topic. So when you use set state or set data over here, that tells React to re-render. So let's go through the order of instructions. So it creates state, it does a fetch, and then this fetch is asynchronous. So this will probably, the lines will just skip to the re-render, and then once it's done over here, it will set state. And then set state is going to be like, oh, I just got new data, I need to re-render, which is fine, right? The first time it's fine. So then it re-renders and it goes back up here again, goes to this line, goes to this line, also makes another fetch again. And then that causes another re-render and another re-render and another re-render. So we're coming across a problem where we need to fetch the data only once. And the way we do that is with useEffect. So over here, we will pull in a useEffect, and a useEffect is a very interesting hook. Essentially, you declare it like this. It takes in a function. So useEffect, you pass it a function, and it takes a second parameter, a list of dependencies, to say to only render. Only run one time, it'll be an empty array over here. So if you see what I did over here, it's an empty array. So inside that, I will put in my fetch, and over here it will fetch only once, and that's it. It won't refetch over and over and over again. It won't clog up the CPU. So what this actually takes is an array of dependencies. So if you pass in like date over here, date changes over and over again. So after every re-render, it pretty much listens to changes. But since we're stating there's no variables to watch, that causes it to only run once. That's the reason why it only runs once. So let's save this. And let's go back to localhost 3000. So let me do a yarn start again. And on port 3001. So let this open up, and I will open my console over here, and we have our data over here. And you notice the first time it's empty again because fetch is asynchronous. So the JavaScript will just execute synchronously and try to finish all its tasks before it goes back to its asynchronous code. Okay, so now we got the data. So now let's actually render this data. So we'll to do that again, we need to use our curly brackets to use JavaScript. So we'll say data.map because it's an array. And then inside each data, inside this data, there's essentially rows. So each row I want to render out into a list, right? And what I want to print out is the title over here. So I will just have to say again in curly brackets again, because it's JavaScript, row.title. And on the outside, list takes a UL element. And I will just cut that and paste that over here. Okay, so I saved that, and if you notice again, this is a TypeScript error because TypeScript doesn't know the type of data. Like we just said, it's an empty array. So it's saying, hey, title that does not exist on this. So we'll actually type save this by creating another interface. So interface data. And then for our use case, we will only do the one variable that we need. So that's title. Actually, let's actually also do ID. So we will do ID, and I'll show you why in a minute we need that. But okay, so to tell useState what type of the variable this will be, we will have to pass it as a generic. So these are some things you can research this in TypeScript. It's called generics. So you basically pass in a type here. So the type that I will pass in is an array of data. And now if we scroll down over here, we notice the squiggly lines are gone. That means TypeScript is happy. It's like, okay, I know what you mean. You declare title at the top, so I know that this element should have title in it. So now if I save this, and now if you see, I get a long list of 100 list items that are from the JSON placeholder API. So let me refresh this one more time. And here's another thing I wanted to point out. So it says, warning, each child in the list should have a unique key prop. So this is complaining about these lines over here, because when in React you re-render a list or like a table rows or anything, it needs to assign a unique key that is not unique globally, but only unique within here. So what I mean by that is two list items can have the same name, but if you had two sibling ones like these, there could be a key here with the same name as a key in here. They just can't have the same key inside the same place. So to fix that, that's the reason why I also typed ID over here. So all we have to do is say key is equal to row.id. So now we save that, and boom, so we have our array getting properly listed out here in TypeScript. We've done our useState, we've made our own components, reusable components, and we've also passed in props and basically made also technically passed a callback function inside this. Okay, that is everything I wanted to cover for the first part of this React tutorial. The second part, I'm going to dive deeper into React, into more of like its context APIs, its use memo and use callback, and other small little quirks that I figured out, and I really want to put it out there so it doesn't surprise you when you start coding in React. This should give you enough knowledge for you to get your own app started from the ground up. I hope everyone found this video helpful. If you did, you know what to do. Leave a like in down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you want to see next. But until then, take care and peace out.